Hola, amigas. I hope you're enjoying day 2 of the Latinas Make a Difference Summit. If you caught that last segment, you heard about the ways that we can give back to our communities individually. Now, let's dive into what happens when we harness our collective power, not just with each other, but with other communities of color too. Here comes Building Bridges and Powering Connections. Enjoy.
Hello, family. My name is Carmen Perez-Jordan, and today we're going to discuss building bridges and powering connections. As part of our Latinas Make a Difference series, we are committed to having a deep discussion about how the Latinx community and other marginalized groups create bridges and harness the power of their shared experiences to break societal and racial inequity as well as barriers. Tonight, we're going to discuss building solidarity, especially between communities that are often marginalized and invisible in our society. We know that our solidarity is essential to creating the change that our communities need to thrive. Yet, it can be very difficult to bridge the gaps between communities. So, what is necessary? Contrary to what is said, when it comes to solidarity conversations, history shows us plenty of examples when Black, Brown, Indigenous, API, LGBTQIA, disability persons have shown up for one another. Whether we're talking about Fred Hampton's Rainbow Coalition in Chicago, Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign, the Great Boycott organized by the United Farm Workers, or the 2017 Women's March on Washington. Solidarity efforts like this continue through many of the organizations and activists that we work with, and there are many who have worked at the intersection of these issues. I am honored to be joined this evening by some esteemed women who know what it takes to build solidarity. Thank you all for joining me. I'm so excited to actually have this conversation with all of you. But first of all, I want to share with our audience what the definition of solidarity is. Solidarity is unity as a group or a class that produces or is based on community or interest, objectives, and standards. And so I want to start with all of you. If you could please share your name, your gender pronoun, an organization or affiliation, community that you represent, and also share a short story about what brought you into this work and what solidarity means to you.
Hi, I'm Katherine Perez, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. For those more familiar with the area, Whittier, California. And I identify as a disabled queer Latina. My grandparents immigrated to the US in the 50s and the 60s, so I'm a few generations in now. So solidarity means that, the phrase that no one is free until we're all free. So it means that we all need to work together out of necessity, and that our movements move forward when we make sure that those in the margins of the margins are being attended to. And this has really spoken to the work that I do in both the Latinx and the disability community in particular. And a little bit about, I think you asked what brought me to this space. As I said, I identify as disabled, but my identity as a person with disability really took a while to form because I have psychiatric disabilities, and growing up with mental illness for as early as I can remember in my Mexican immigrant family was just something that we didn't talk about. So it wasn't really until really my adulthood that I found out about the disability rights movement and that I could identify with the disability community. But actually my sense of disability justice formed at a really young age because of my sister. So I first came into disability activism, advocacy, because my sibling, who's a year younger than me, is autistic and has intellectual disability. So I identify also as a family member of a disabled person. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen, for sharing that. I want to pass it on to you, Ingrid, to just kind of share with us how you got involved in this work, as well as, your gender pronoun, what communities you represent, as well as what solidarity means to you.
Thank you for having me, Carmen. Like you already said, my name is Ingrid Archie. My gender pronouns are she, her, hers. The community that I represent is Los Angeles. I would say more broadly South Central Los Angeles, to be exact. That's where I was born and raised. This is currently where I organize at. This is also the community where I got a lot of experience with police and being in and out of the system. Probably starting from 14 is when I first went to jail, and I stopped going in and out of systems in somewhere in my 30s. It wasn't until I came to a community-based organization called A New Way of Life where I not only had a safe place to land from prison, but it also gave me kind of like the initiative, around organizing, that it's not just about finding some place to land. It's about these systems that are created so that we don't have a place to land, so that we always go back to the same system over and over. And how do we stop that system? How do we change systems from looking at Black mamas as not Black mamas, as just, throwaways? And not just Black mamas, like anybody that's a mama that has been in the system, you're looked down upon and you're not valued. And so just wanting to shift that paradigm is what got me into the work. And I was tired of going back to jail, and it gave me a job, and it just, it helped me understand what my purpose was more, more than anything. And, like I'm in it to win it forever. And solidarity for me means two groups of people having, a whole lot of differences and a whole lot of similarities, but one common goal is to fight a system that they know is not built for the both of them, and understanding that there's powers in numbers. And yeah, we don't have to be jolly and skip down the street, but we know that when we get down the street, what's for us, and either we gonna hold hands and create a wall so that they can't penetrate us, or we gonna keep fighting and keep the divide. So, that's what solidarity means to me.
Thank you so much for that, Ingrid, and thank you for joining us in this conversation. Karen, I'm going to pass it over to you. What brought you to this work, and what does solidarity mean to you as well? And your name and your gender pronoun, and any organization or identity that you represent, please share with our audience.
Great. Thank you so much again for having me, Carmen. It's been really life-giving for me to be in community with the spaces for the Gathering for Justice and all y'all do here, and full of passion and inspiration for us here. And I'm actually a co-convener at the People's Collective for Justice and Liberation. And what we do is we focus on solidarity efforts, cross-racial solidarity, and we're basically focusing the Asian and Asian American communities that have shown up, that have spoken against the recent rise of anti-Black racism, especially during COVID-19 pandemic, and the intersection that it had with the Asian and Asian American community while we were scapegoated and targeted for the sins of this nation. The way that I came into this work really is, I was born and raised in Oxnard, California. I'm from the 805. We have some folks in representing now. And we have one of the first cross-racial solidarities with United Farm Workers. If you look back at history, it really sets a precedent for the way I understood the world. I know coming from the 805 is very different from a lot of other spaces. While there is, systemic racism, sexism, homophobia, etc., transphobia, absolutely, that we experience in the 805, oftentimes we found a lot of collective solidarity amongst peers, and we were, we all experienced different ways that we faced racism, especially in the 805. While it's not necessarily segregated, we had racism in our schools. We had racism with the police. Folks were definitely criminalized in my community in different ways. And when we're talking about the Asian American experience, we're often stereotyped as a model minority. And usually I see that as a bid to kind of divide our communities. And really it dampens this longer legacy of solidarity and racial solidarity that we've had with Black and Brown communities, even since, the 1960s Civil Rights Revolution. We were out there, we were, we have such a long history of cross-racial solidarity that I feel in moments when we're facing increased oppression, that's when you're going to see these bids to divide us. And I think it's really important for us to keep our listening, keep talking, and keep sharing across. So yes, I'm with the People's Collective for Justice and Liberation. And just shout out to all y'all and for the amazing work that you're doing here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And I, if those of you who know me, I'm a proud Chicana feminist from the 805 Oxnard, California, even though I am living in New York City. And I do remember just the way in which we grew up in Oxnard. There was a very large Filipino, very large Samoan, African-American and Chicano community. And we always felt like this sense of community with one another, right? Really growing up, whether you were playing sports or you're going to different neighborhoods. And you know, there was a lot of street organizations that are also still in Oxnard. But there is like this sense of like understanding and welcoming our friends' parents in their language. And sometimes it was Tagalog, sometimes it was, Spanish, sometimes it was, Chinese, or you found yourself understanding these different languages. And for me, I also know, like, growing up, people mistook me for being, Samoan. And I shared that story with you. And so I feel like my foundation in doing solidarity work really came from the community that I grew up in. And it was really, and I love the way in which you described it, Ingrid. It was really about common understanding, right? And this tolerance that I think sometimes we don't have, not shaming one another when you were younger about not knowing, but really asking the question, oh, my bad, like I didn't know, that what I said harmed you, right? And I think that as we get older and we are part of these movements, there's this cancel culture that doesn't allow us to really evolve into people who can actually be in solidarity. It feels as though we have to know everything. And so I want to transition us into, when was the first time that you recognized you were doing solidarity work, but you did not know it was called solidarity?
So I have one. We were at the Quest for Democracy event that is held by a group called All of Us or None, a bunch of people formerly incarcerated, fighting mass incarceration and so on and so forth, right? So Quest for Democracy was, a time when organizations would go to the Capitol and we would do these ledge visits and we would talk about, whatever bill it was that we see that is something, along the lines of what we're fighting for, fighting against, we'll go do the ledge visit, right? Now, the problem with this was that everybody was so confused, right? And we had, I think it was Homies Unidos was in our group. And so a lot of the people from Homies Unidos didn't speak English, right? And so I remember the one bill that we were, I can't even remember the name of the bill, but it was the bill where people were getting sentenced because they was in a car with somebody in close contact and they were getting the same sentence as a person who committed the crime, right? I can't even remember. I'm so mad I can't remember the name of this bill, but the whole point is that when we both read the bill, whether it was in English and Spanish, we knew that this had to stop because a lot of our people was sitting in prison, you know what I'm saying? Not because they actually did the crime, but because they was in the wrong place at the wrong time or whatever the case may be. We knew that we had both probably traumatic experiences with it because our people had gotten long sentences and, we trying to get them home. So what I did is I was like, look, since we have this commonality around this bill, why don't we allow the people who don't speak English to have like a translator or something, right? and let them talk, about their situation, because I know that, they have translation inside the Capitol, and we're just going to stand up when they start talking, and we're not going to say nothing, but we're going to stand up for them, right? And let her talk, let her have the floor. Don't nobody say nothing unless she's really having a hard time, right? And so that's what we did. We went in there and we let the what do you call the older person?
The veterano, the elder.
Yes, we let the elder talk. And after she was done, then one of us, one of the her person that was Black had something to say about the same situation. And at the end, I came in and said, these is two different stories in two different languages, but it all happened to the same, you know what I'm saying? But this is one common thing that has happened to two people. And the whole strength of this is that it's not about what we speak or don't speak. It's about this is happening and hurting our communities. So what can you do to stop it now that we coming in together? And we don't have to be holding hands. We just gonna stand up for each other. And it was power in that. And the legislator was, well, it wasn't the legislator, it was probably the aide or whatever. They were like, they took a lot of notes and they were surprised because of the fact that it was a person speaking Spanish that we were standing up for. We didn't know what she was saying, but it didn't matter because we knew why we was in there, and we knew our job was to do one thing: stand up. Don't do nothing else. And when it's your turn, then you do what you need to do, So that's one of my examples of solidarity.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have an example of the first time they found themselves doing solidarity work and didn't know it was solidarity?
Yeah, I think this is more an example how I accidentally fell into solidarity work. So I come from a privileged background. I'm a non-practicing attorney. I'm currently a law professor at Loyola Law School. I do work in law and policy. I went on to get my PhD. I'm on this 20-year path, so I'm actually still technically a student writing my dissertation. I'm a really big nerd. So here I am in this very academic ivory tower kind of spaces. And the more and more I go through my education, the more and more I'm finding out how white these spaces are. And I am doing all this work in disability spaces specifically. I'm getting a PhD, for example, in disability studies. My legal work has been in disability law. I teach disability law. And so, my head was sort of in the book, wanting to do more legal research and sort of esoteric analysis. But I quickly found out, accidentally stumbled into the disability rights movement when I found out how white the space really was and the critique about disability being too white. And it was just, I call it, both my burden, but also an opportunity, right? And a lot of times people look to, I know you all probably have this experience, to be representative of the one person of color in the room, which I always point out is terrible for me because I'm a very light-skinned Latina. I know we didn't do visual descriptions of what we look like, but so I felt that pressure, on all of the programs that I started doing, past graduating high school. I always had the diversity scholarship, the diversity, this and that. So in my PhD, again, I was given another sort of diversity fellowship to do. And I said, okay, well, I'll put this conference together to work on this glaring issue, which I think is the disability community and the Latino community are not doing enough work together. And out of that conference, it was a 9-month fellowship. I put the conference together with some really great collaborators. And I couldn't leave the work to go back to just my dissertation writing. If the work was there, it was glaring that it was needed. And so we ended up starting the National Coalition for Latinxes with Disabilities and ended up doing, it felt like a full-time job for the next 4 years as I was trying to finish my degree, which has stalled me a little. And since I've left the organization, and now I'm a director at the Coehlo Center at Loyola Law School, like I said. But, those 4 years were fascinating. It was during the Trump era, and there was a lot of rhetoric and assault around immigrants. And for example, the issue of public charge really implicated immigrants with disabilities. So although we were an organization that represented issues on Latinos with disabilities across the board, immigration became one of our really big areas of concern and making sure that we did solidarity work with immigrant groups who are fighting back against the administration to make sure that that disability rights were understood and mentioned, and disabled immigrants were being attended to. So I feel like I kind of accidentally fell into this work. You know, I'm very introverted, like nerdy, have all these anxiety disabilities, but the work's out there. There's so much work to be done in this space. And so I just sort of stepped up and found my community, small but mighty community, taking it from there.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think oftentimes we do find ourselves in institutions that don't really have a visual representation of us, right? But Karen, I just want to hear from you, and then we'll move on to, you know, just kind of another question. I know that we're running up on time, but want to hear from you. When did you see yourself, you know, for the first time, you know, doing this type of solidarity work, but not knowing it was called solidarity?
Mine was really early on, and I wasn't sure. I was just trying to be cool, you know, trying to fit into college. I know that you get involved, and I was really lonely because it was one of the first places where folks of color were not the majority. You know, coming from Oxnard, Carmen, you know that we really did rule the streets. We ruled the streets. And so when I had made it, you know, like one of the, you know, very few Filipinos at the time that made it into higher education, I know things have changed definitely during the time. There was very little of us. And so I sought out community amongst the Filipinx students. And during the time, I got involved with outreach to help other Filipinx to think about higher education and the pathway after high school. Because I didn't think I would ever make it into a UC. I really thought I was going to stay in Oxnard. I was going to have the babies. I was going to do all the things, right, that folks
we get told we're going to do. Yes,
we're going to do those things. You know, stick around, take care of our parents, and they're like, we're going to stay here and be the townies. And so I never thought I'd make it into higher education. But once I got there, that's when my mind really did open up. I found other folks, and I really just like looked around and was like, where are all the Filipinos, right? So I joined the Filipino Academic Student Services, which is PASS at my UC. We ended up doing an outreach in Southern California. And it was that time that Prop 209 and 187 were coming through. And all my friends were like, you know, we need to demonstrate. And so while we were down here doing our high school and community college outreaches, we also decided to march along. We didn't know why. I just knew that all the folks were out, you know, and when we got there, we saw a huge police presence at these marches. And at that time, we were just like, okay, no matter what, we're going to hold hands. We're going to hold them tight. And if they can't take all of us. And I remember, you know, coming up against, you know, a really large group of cops. And it was probably the scariest moment for me at like 19 years old. But I knew that it was something that I needed to do because of so many folks who had my back as a kid. And we had each other's back as kids. And so it was there. And although I didn't, you know, understand it completely, I knew that in the long run, this is very important for my community back in Oxnard and for folks in higher education. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind all of you that sometimes there are these labels to things that we naturally do every single day, right? We didn't know we did solidarity work, especially when you grow up in Black and Brown communities, right? API communities. But, you know, language, let's talk about language. Language is so important. I learned when I was organizing the 2017 Women's March on Washington that, you know, I learned so much about disability activism, right? And I remember saying, I stand with my Black sisters, and people were like, well, some of us can't stand, right? So that's not necessarily inclusive, although we were talking about inclusivity. But, you know, because language is powerful, what is important to know about what we say and what we don't say when we show up? What should we be mindful of? You know, BLM is a perfect example of so many people wanting to get involved and be allies, or some of us call ourselves co-conspirators, right? We kind of a little bit more advanced than the ally. But like, what are some of the things? I know, Ingrid, you work at the intersection of women, people who are formerly incarcerated. You also work at the intersection of showing up for people who are Latinx, who are monolingual Spanish folks. You also show up for folks that are impacted by police violence, by violence. There are so many identities and intersections. You also are a Black woman, right? And BLM has really kind of created the entry point for people to get involved in the movement. What are some things that we should be mindful of when we show up for your communities, as well as you, Katherine, and you, Karen? What are some things that we should be thinking about?
I think when anyone is showing up in solidarity for anybody, it's important to do your homework.
Yeah.
You know, it's important to know exactly what you're showing up for, because sometimes you can show up to something and it could be like the fighter in spirit in you that's like, I'm in solidarity, but then you say something that could be harmful and you don't know that it's harmful, just like you said before. And it'll make a person look at you a certain type of way, or sometimes it'll ostracize you out that group and you don't even know it. I just think it's important for us to do our homework on the different groups that we want to stand up for. I could stand with people from the Latino community and I may not know the exact language. So I'll ask, you know, like, what is it that I shouldn't say or should say, you know, because I don't want to, even though I may be a powerful leader, that don't mean nothing when you showing up for somebody else and you can't, you know, take away from that power and just be there, you know, as a person, and understand that sometimes you can't play by your rules. When you in somebody's backyard, you got to know what the rules are. You got to be willing to play, you know, by those rules for the common goal. And it don't mean that it's a bad thing. It just means that you got to be willing to kind of, you know, I wouldn't say take yourself apart, but just be willing to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
Be willing to shift and have a common understanding, have some knowledge about, you know, what you have some knowledge about what you're doing. I think the worst thing is when people don't know what they're talking about and they don't know what they're doing. And then they start using all these labels. You know, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. You done read an article or something and you done came up with some words. So a lot of times that's what's happening. And, you know, a lot of times we got to be willing to pull people to the side and not cancel them out if they make a mistake.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
Be willing to educate a person and be like, look, sis, let me educate you right fast, because, you know, I understand your energy, but you feel me, it may not be working for this space. So let's figure it out real fast. And it's not it's all in love. When we do it in love, people can accept it. You know, I feel like more better than when we say, oh, you showed up in solidarity with us, but you didn't wear green shoes, you know, so we're gonna cancel you because you didn't wear green shoes. And it's like, well, damn, I was just trying to match. You know, I didn't know you would take it so personally. Right. But when we tell a person like, this is why we want you to wear these type of shoes, because it's unity and this, that, then a person can understand it, as opposed to you saying they wore red shoes and we want to cancel the red shoes and the person. Like, you're not just canceling that person, you're canceling their confidence, you're canceling leadership, you canceling who they could breathe into, and so on and so forth. So that's the other thing.
Thank you so much for that. Katherine.
Yeah, so the disability community, like every community, is just so diverse. And you're going to make mistakes in our community with language. There's a lot to study and to practice. But I mean, I guess the idea is that, you know, don't be afraid to talk to us, to talk about us, to talk with us, to join us. I think really the general rule of thumb is, you know, call people what they want to be called, how they want to identify.
Right.
There are some hard and fast rules, but even those are pretty contentious. You know, there's a lot of conversation, for example, between using people first language and identity first language. So do we say person with a disability versus disabled person? And you'll find people across the board who will tell you various things. So, you know, I think the idea is just, you know, not to be afraid, to be open to make those mistakes, to be corrected, like Ingrid was saying, and to know that we, you know, that we trust your intention, and hopefully, you know, there's no shame in learning from others and correcting yourself moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, so much of that I would agree with, Ingrid and Katherine. I appreciate that. And just some words that Carmen, you've given us as one of our advisory council members, is to be honest about our differences between the groups. Don't compare our struggles. It's important for us to hold space for both ours and other communities, and really to enter into relationships that are transformational, not transactional. And those words really resonate with me. Where there's a deep listening, there's a deep intention, and to be open and honest just where we are at, and we should hold on to each other tightly in moments when we're revealing what is coming, what folks have been facing for centuries. And so to keep the listening open, to keep the talking and the conversations going are important.
Well, I want to thank you, Ingrid, Katherine, and Karen so much for joining us in this amazing conversation around solidarity. You are all so beautiful. I want to remind everybody listening that you are loved, you are powerful, you are necessary. We need you in this movement for solidarity. As you learned today, there are different people from different walks of life bridging our communities to ensure that we seek collective liberation. And so always know that there is a lane for you, that it is okay to ask questions, that many of us should open our arms up with love, so that we could co-create, co-educate, and co-liberate. And I want to leave us with a quote from Leela Watson, who's an Aboriginal woman, who said, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if your liberation is bound with mine, then let us work with one another." So I welcome you to join this movement for solidarity, because we need you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Hola, my name is Natalie Archibald Solano, and I am a Dominicana from the Bronx. I've had many transformative moments in my life, from the good, the bad, the ugly, because what is life if we're not constantly evolving, right? But my most transformative and powerful moment, my Poder en Acción, happened between 2018 and 2019 when I chose me. It wasn't easy, but once I fully embraced myself and acknowledged the value that I hold, I met my husband, had my beautiful daughter, and started my coaching and consulting business. Ultimately, nothing is more powerful and transformative for a woman than when she finally recognizes her value and unapologetically receives the blessings of her hard work with open arms. These are milestones that most people hit progressively, but for me, it came all at once. And that was and still is my biggest blessing and the most powerful example that manifestation works. Many people think manifestation means that you wish upon a star and it just comes true like poof. But for me, manifestation is a cumulative process that reflects my personal growth, my grit, and optimism. Even though it seems like my Poder in Action moment happened overnight, let me tell you, chicas, it did not. All of these bendiciones came to me after some difficult personal and professional moments where I had to decide, am I going to choose me, or am I going to keep giving my all to people and organizations that didn't value me? I betted on myself. Today, I'm my own boss. Well, my daughter is the real boss, but I'm happy, free, and loved. Some would say I couldn't ask for more, but the beauty of valuing yourself is that you know there's always more to receive, more to love, and more to achieve.
Hola, buenos dias. My name is Desi Bartlett, and welcome to Poderistas. Today, I'm super excited to share my practice with you. We will enjoy yoga for a feeling of being centered and peaceful, with a little bit of fitness so that you feel strong from the inside out. Now, I'm Mexican American. I was born in Chicago, but I lived in Mexico for 5 years. And sometimes I speak in English, a veces en español, or Spanglish. And my approach to movement is the same. I like to bring the two forms together so that you get the best of both worlds. So let's begin. if I could ask you to please simply stand with your feet hips distance apart. Now I know usually when I'm working with women, when I say hips distance apart, they stand like this. No, find your hip bones, line up your feet, and bring your hands to your heart center, please. You can close the eyes and slow your breath down. As you slow your breath down, slow your thoughts down, and call all parts of your consciousness back to this moment. So any part of your mind that is making future to-do lists or reviewing the past, just like if you were speaking to a small child ever so sweetly, call it back. Set a clear intention for your practice today. My intention is to share the integration of movement with you, again, so that you can enjoy the best of both worlds. And so it is. We'll enjoy 3 slow, steady breaths together, lifting the arms. Inhalamos. Lift the arms, palms touch. Exhale. Touch your thumbs to your third eye for clarity of vision, and to the heart for clarity of emotion. 2 veces más. Inhale, reach those arms all the way up. Exhale, draw a line from the sky to your heart space. And just one more, please. Inhaling, get long through the waist, long through the arms. Exhaling, llevando las manos al corazón. Beautiful. Let's inhale, reach the arms forward now. You can round your spine a little bit. Exhale, draw the elbows back. So I'd like for you to think about what it is you'd like to pull towards you today. What is it that you're magnetizing? Inhale, exhale, and just 2 more. Breathing in and feel it coming towards you, coming into your world. 1 more. Inhale, exhale. Beautiful. From here, you can step or jump your feet nice and wide. And you're going to turn to your right and simply bring the back knee down to the floor. If you need extra padding under the knee, grab a blanket or a towel. And I just want you to feel this first stretch through the hip flexor. Now, when you're ready, inhale the arms up overhead. Exhale, hinge forward. So you'll hear that I'm exhaling through the mouth for these first few repetitions. I want you to get the sense of breathing deeply, sort of like you're blowing out a birthday candle. Now try that while keeping the lips together. 1 more. Inhale. Big stretch. Exhale. Fantastic. Now reach those arms forward just as you did when you were standing. Exhale, pull. Inhale. What are you calling in? Today I'm calling in strength, I'm calling in flexibility, and I'm calling in joy. 2 more. Inhale. So you're working your core and your lower body for sure. Inhale, exhale. And now we'll bump that work up just a little bit. Bring your hands onto your hips, tuck your back toes under, and you simply have an active lunge. So you inhale on the way down, exhale on the way up. Inhale down, feel the strength in your legs. Exhale and lift. You've got 3. Inhale, exhale. Last 2. Remember, balance is a verb, so keep finding your balance. 1 more. Turn to face me, and you sit into a really wide plie position. Now I like to move side to side and feel that stretch through the inner thigh. And bring your arms out to the sides. Your thumb and your index finger come together. You can close your eyes once again. Breathe deeply. Feel gravity drawing your hips down. I know your thighs are starting to burn a little bit. It's okay. Stick with me. It's only 10 more seconds. Drop, lower, lower. How low can you go? And now it becomes active. Inhale, exhale. Nice and low. Lift up. So I like to envision a circle of energy around me, sort of like the sun, sort of like my yoga mat. Great big circle. And up. Good work. Let's turn to the second side for the low lunge. So begin simply with a stretch. Feel the stretch. Deepen the breath. Good. Let's add some arms. Inhale, little back bend. Exhale and hinge. Spread your arms like wings. Inhale. Exhale. And again, breathe in. Breathe out. And you remember the feeling of calling in to your energy, into your space. We're going to do that right now. So are you ready? Let's inhale, reach. What is it that you're calling in? Pull it towards you. So I can push away that which no longer serves, and I can draw towards me my strength, my energy, my support system, like all of you, and hands to the hips. And I think that's important for us to remember. Tuck your back toes under. Let's come into our lunges. You are not alone. We're not alone. We have the power of community. 3 more. And this community is so beautiful. 1 more. So diverse. Turn to face me. And empowering. You know, we really want to see everyone realize their dreams. Sit nice and low. Go a little bit deeper if you can. Fantastic. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And you should be glowing. That's my way of saying there should be a little bit of sweat right now. Una más. Inhale, exhale, and hands to your hips. Turn to the first side. We have 5 more active lunges, and you can choose which arm you like. Meaning, you can reach and draw down. You can reach and draw towards you. Which one feels most natural? 2 more. Inhale, exhale. 1 more. Fantastic. Hands to the heart, warrior 2. Now I know so many of us are really busy. We're moms, we're working, we're doing everything. And so making time for ourselves sometimes falls to the bottom of the list. Inhale up, exhale. Thank you for taking the time for yourself today, for your self-care, for getting stronger, for getting more flexible, for feeling your power and calling in your dreams through your movement right here, right now in warrior pose. So this pose is all about standing your ground. Feel the power in your legs. Feel the power from your heart expanding through the channels of the arms. 2 more deep breaths. 1 more. Turn to face me. You know where we're going. It's the big circle, all the way up. And it's a full range of motion. So you're getting stronger and more flexible at every angle. 2 more. We only gain strength and flexibility at the angles at which we work. 1 more. And turn around to the first side. And we have our 5 lunges. Again, you can choose which arm variation feels best. You can reach forward and draw back. You can reach up and pull down. Up to you. 3 more. 2 more. 1 more. You've got this. Warrior 2. Expand. Expand through the heart. Lift and lower. Inhale. Exhale, reach out. 4 más, por favor. Inhale. Exhale. Feel the strength in your legs. Feel the power in the easy rhythm of your breath cycle. 1 more. Pause here. Warrior. You are the warrior. You are the one who's showing up for yourself and for your family every day. I'm really proud of you, and I'm right here with you. Let's share our strength. One more big breath. Turn to face me. Okay. We're going to get those thighs a little bit toasty. So drop your hips. Más abajo, más abajo. Lower, 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 lower. How low can you go? Lower, lower. Yep. It's okay if you're yelling at me right now. I totally get it. My hips are yelling too. They're saying, wait. But my mind is completely aware that what I'm doing right now for you and for me will bring us both more strength and more power in the pelvic floor, in the core, in the thighs, and in our minds. Our mind gives up way before our body does. Stick with me. 10 more seconds. Feels good to move a little side to side, get that stretch. 5 more, you can do this. Come on. 5, 4, 3, 2, oh my goodness. Hands to the floor. You can straighten your legs and just easily fold forward. Good, you made it. And in these last few minutes of this particular practice, we will simply focus on stretching. Turn to the first side again, bring that back knee down. You've done this several times, but now I would like for you to bring your elbows to the floor if that's available to you. So now you feel a deeper stretch through that back hip flexor. And this is your psoas muscle that you're stretching. This is the muscle that engages when we are in fight or flight. And these past 2 years, there's been a lot of that, right? There's been a lot of, do I stay here, dig my heels in and fight? Whether it's in politics or the pandemic, or simply showing up every day, or do I flee? Now, I know this community, and I know that we have some very powerful voices that remind us that we have the strength to speak up when needed. And the fight can be won by using our voices collectively. So good. One more big breath. And let's take one beautiful back bend here. So as you're ready, you're going to take one hand towards the floor and one hand towards the sky. Breathe. One more big breath. Cartwheel the hands to the floor and simply turn to the other side. Good work. Okay, so hands can come down, elbows can come down. Now there is a third element that can happen when we're really stressed. Fight, flight, or freeze. Sometimes we just kind of get stuck. If you've experienced that freezing, that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm a little bit stuck, I'd like you to close your eyes and work with your slow, steady breath as though it is a healing balm or salve, and let it heal your nervous system so that you're no longer frozen, so that the warmth of the breath allows for freedom. Freedom to express, freedom to share, freedom to realize all that it is that you wish to bring into this world. And from here, we move into that beautiful back bend. So there's a feeling of an open heart, sharing your heart with the world, with your family, with your community. And cartwheel those hands forward. Come back to all fours, crisscross your ankles behind you, have a seat, and good news, you get to lay down. So as you lay down, bring your knees into your chest and simply take your favorite twist to one side. So you swivel your knees to one side and you turn your beautiful face in the opposite direction. You can close your eyes if you wish. Have one hand on your ribs so that you can feel the movement of breath. Good work. Switch sides. And so anything that we do on the right, of course, we want to practice on the left as well, so that there's a feeling of balance. Balance from right to left, balance from front to back, balance from top to bottom. 2 more deep breaths. One more. And for Shavasana today, for our final resting pose, you can lay on your side like Sleeping Beauty and let your arm become a pillow. And with your eyes softly closed, allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm. Relax your toes, your ankles, your lower legs. Enjoy the feeling of relaxation through the knees and the thighs. And really let go of any work in the hips. You did a lot today, so let that rest. Rest in the belly, the back. The chest is soft so that you can breathe naturally. Breathing sort of in the way that you do on the 3rd day of vacation when you have forgotten the to-do lists and the cell phone or email. Relax through the arms, the hands, and especially through the neck. I'd even like to ask you to relax your scalp here. So remember the last time that you had your hair cut, perhaps if someone else washed your hair, it's that feeling of luxurious self-care. Relax through the top of your head. And last, but of course not least, relax your beautiful face. Muy bien. Y con la cara relajada, let's easily come back up. Sit up nice and tall. Bring your hands to your heart, bowing the head slightly. The divine light in me recognizes and bows to the divine light in todos ustedes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for sharing your energy, your power, your voice, and for taking this time for you, for your self-care. Namaste. Thank you, Poderistas. My name is Desi Bartlett. You can find me on Instagram at Mothers Into Living Fit and online at desibodymindcom. Nos vemos.